Okay, so posted a link last night talking about some very high uh, like crimes against our federal government, and I really wanted to do a follow-up video. I have some notes here, but screw it. I'm not even gonna go through these. Just want to have a candid conversation. Number one, I want to say that all of our government is accountable because they all have access to, for the most part, the same information. Number one. Number two, there's so much conspiracy stuff online right now. Like, it's crazy. There's stuff with 5G and Corona. There's stuff with, there's just so, I can go through them all. There's just so many things. For me, I'm trying to keep down the straight and narrow. I'm not here to look at specific conspiracies and see if they're true or not. It's not going to help us. None of that is going to help our society, specifically Canada, move forward from where we're at. In order to keep going, we need to move forward with a plan. So we need to start formulating that because there isn't one. That's number one. Number two, and I'm on like point number 6, but number two, I think this is important to talk about. I think this video, if there's one video I put out, is extremely important for you, the Canadian citizen of this great country, to watch this video. Okay? I have notes. I can't even reference them. It's so frustrating. Here's the situation. In the middle of January, the federal government received credible military intelligence from our Canadian military that there was a pandemic happening in China, that there was a virus outbreak of which we've probably never seen before. This was credible, sourced information, boots on the ground in China, that reported back to the federal government, middle of January. The federal government chose not to act on this credible military information. This wasn't coming from reporters or random scientists or citizens or anybody else. This was coming from within our government, from within our military branch, and they chose not to act on it. Instead, what they did was they decided to let 2,000 plus people from ground zero in China, from where the pandemic was happening, they chose to allow 2,000 plus people to come in from that area and walk around our cities in Canada. Think about that for a second. Let the gravity of that point hit home. They aren't allowing us to leave our houses now, but they allowed every single person that came over there to walk around our country with no regard. Zero regard for human life in Canada. Zero regard. They didn't just allow that for like a week, for a couple of days. This went on from the middle of January until the middle of March. 2 months. They allowed people to walk around from a highly contagious that had a highly contagious virus coming from an area where there was hundreds of thousands, not 5,000, not 10,000, hundreds of thousands of infected people, and probably millions, because any information coming out of China has zero credibility and has never had credibility because China has zero credibility. So the federal government, instead of deciding to act on credible military information to prevent our citizens from being exposed to the level we're exposed at, instead of acting on that credible information, you know what they did? They did nothing. And not only did they do nothing, they allowed that virus to cross our border in the thousands and allowed those people to walk around our cities throughout our country and infect people that weren't infected here, that had no exposure to the virus other than people traveling in. This was not community spread. This was brought in from another country, brought in from other citizens. And it started in China, but then it went to Europe, and they let people from Europe into our country, knowing that those people could be infected. And you know what else they didn't do? At the border, when those people landed, they weren't put into quarantine. No. And they knew they were coming from those areas. They didn't go into quarantine. They were told, some of them, you might need to self-isolate. Some of them. What am I missing here? This is treason to our citizens. Having credible information, knowing that people were dying in China. They allowed that virus to be transmissible through people from China to our Canadian citizens. They allowed it when they had a chance to stop it. That is treason, because they do not carry our regard, the Canadian citizen regard. They don't hold that in the highest regard. They don't keep that accountable. There's nothing accountable to us. We are left here walking around, picking this virus up, allowing it to happen for 2 months. 2. And then the answer is to lock everybody in their house like a cage. And I'm frustrated, I'm infuriated, because I'm damn well sure I got it. Damn well sure I got it. But when I had it in February, there was no information from the government. There was no, this could be what we're going to have. This could be the coronavirus. They knew about it and they didn't act on it. And they let the citizens be exposed. And now they want to try and stop it. After 2 months. What am I missing here? People, we need to wake up. This government has zero interest for us. Zero. They're dangling a $2,000 check to stay in our house because they messed up at the highest level and continue to do so. Should we wear masks or should we not wear masks? Should we do this or should we not do this? They have flip-flopped on every single decision they've made over the last 2 months. Flip-flopped. These are people in positions of authority with credible information coming in, and they aren't listening to it. What are we doing here? What is happening? And then to make matters worse, the guy in charge goes away for a weekend in the middle of a pandemic. What am I missing here? What is going on? So here's the deal. Because we don't actually have a plan, there never was a plan, and there isn't a plan now. Do you know what the plan has been? Let's open up the government vault of money, which is our tax-paying dollars. By the way, we are in debt as a nation over $750 billion. The second richest oil nation in the world. We have the second largest reserves in the world. Every single Canadian should be extremely wealthy off our oil reserves alone. But they sold a lot of those interests in the last couple of years to China. They let Canadian and North American companies fail, go bankrupt, and then allow China to scoop in and pick up those contracts. Who is in bed with our government? And who are they in bed with? It's not the Canadian citizens. Now look, this isn't a political video. The Liberals have failed us at every single turn, and the Conservative and NDP governments, the coalition that's supposed to be the watchdogs of this Liberal government, who's got their hand in the cookie jar and is taking every single cookie from our Canadian citizens, every aspect of our government has failed in every regard. Now you're going to go, well, Ken, this isn't the time. We're going through a pandemic. Our leader is at a cottage for the weekend and posting about it on social media. So let me break this down for you. We are in a Cold War with China. If you think that this isn't calculated from the Chinese government to take control of our markets and to be able to go in and buy things when our markets have been depleted, you are sadly mistaken. This isn't a conspiracy theory. There are boots on the ground, both American, Canadian, and all over the world, that are reporting this every single day. And what are we doing? We're in our houses allowing this to happen. Our government is forcing us in our houses while this takeover happens. This isn't a conspiracy. We have been bamboozled. I can't even think of the right word. We have been blindsided, but know that this is going on. Let me remind you, World War II wasn't that long ago. And my grandfather, along with countless other people's fathers, grandfathers, siblings, went over and fought for the rights and the freedoms that we enjoy and take for granted. And we're just allowing those rights and freedoms to be taken advantage of, to be taken from us, from a government that has zero interest for us. They're spending our tax dollars and giving it back to us. And by the way, they're taxing those tax dollars because they're calling it income. People, we need to wake up. When we come out of this, we are not going to have an economy to come back to. We are not going to have something to come back to. They've just said another 28 days. What are we doing here? Now, I don't have a plan to get out because the government is forcing all of our businesses to remain closed, meaning zero revenue, meaning if we want to pay people, we don't have the resources, we don't have the revenue, which doesn't come from the government. The revenue is generated from business owners, people that go out and generate it. We create the goods and services. Then we go and do the goods and services. We employ people to do the goods and services. We collect that and pay those people. We create jobs. We can't do that right now. And what's going to happen is a majority of businesses operate on months' revenue that happened a couple months ago. Well, we're not generating any new revenue. So once the revenue dries up from last month and the month before, there's nothing to come back to. We're going to see massive closures. We're going to see massive bankruptcies. By the way, the Canadian people are one of the most indebted populations in the world. That $1 million mortgage your neighbor has, your house has an $800,000 mortgage on it. And the BMW in the driveway is leased at $800 a month. And their kids that are in private school, they're paying $5,000, $6,000 a month. But it's all financed. Sure, they make good money, but then they go and borrow against it and pay interest on it. We need to wake up. So there's no clear answer to get out of here because we have a government that has no clue what they're doing, running this country, flip-flopping on every decision that's being made, taking orders from the World Health Organization, who's in bed with China. There's been nothing reported from China that's come out accurate. This isn't conspiracy. This is what is going on. The reality is it's up to you and me. No one is coming to save us. No one is coming to bail us out. The government's not going to be able to save all of these companies. They're not going to save all these jobs. The banks don't care. The banks do not care. You're not getting a break from your bank. It's not happening. It's time to sit down and really think about what's going on. And not from a conspiracy standpoint. This isn't something that they just thought up and thought we're gonna keep people in their houses. This is just a lack of incompetence. This is a lack of being able to make clear decisions, extreme incompetence, and not being able to pull the trigger when the trigger needed to be pulled. Think about it. We're in for it, guys. And the only way we're getting out of this is you and I. That's it. The only way. And I'm trying to come up with some plans how this can actually be resolved, how we can get back to our life. But I don't know. I don't know. Do you? That's it.